Well, good morning, everyone. Whoa. So, welcome to June's edition of Coffee Chat. It's good to see some familiar faces out there, folks who are live and also those who are joining virtually. So my name is Todd Sansbury. I'm one of the town commissioners. Unfortunately, the mayor is traveling and cannot be here today. He does send his regards, but we're going to move forward with the schedule anyway. So I see some of my fellow commissioners here, Commissioner Osborne and Commissioner Bilodeau in the back. So welcome to those guys. They're going to give us an update this morning. So I do want to kind of point out a few things. 'Tis the season, right? So I know a lot of high schools are graduating. So if anyone is involved with the graduate, has one, or is a family member, congratulations to you guys. I know it's a very exciting time. I also know that summer boating season is gearing up. So please, we want to remind you guys to be safe out on the lake. We're fortunate to have that as a landscape, as part of our amenities for this great town, but just be sure you guys are careful with that. Hey, a few quick reminders. There is a town board meeting this evening at 6 o'clock. So we encourage everyone here and listening to attend. Those are always really great to get updates. And there's currently a budget survey available online. Very, very important that we solicit feedback regarding both our town's annual budget and the use of our ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan funds. So please, if you have not done so, go online, fill that out, and encourage your neighbors and friends to do so as well. So guys, we're going to get started this morning. We have, I think, 3 different presentations. First of all, our town manager, Andrew Grant, is going to give us a budget update, which is very important. Next, my fellow commissioners are going to update you guys on the Growth Management Committee, which is a very important committee that looks at updating the land use plan for our town. And then finally, famous Mr. Wayne Herron in the back is going to give us the all-important and never to be missed transportation update. So yes, we would never miss that. But please, along the way, stop, ask questions about the topics being discussed or anything else. You know, obviously this is an open forum, an open book. And afterwards, if you have any questions, you can please approach myself, the other commissioners, or any of the town staff. Any questions so far? Excellent. All right, I'm going to pass it along to Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. And good morning, everybody, and appreciate everyone being here to learn about the budget. I'm sure that's why everyone's here, because it's so riveting and so exciting. And in spite of the sarcasm, as I tell the board every year, regardless of what board members we're working with, this is the #1 most important policy document that every board works on and adopts, because it sets the table for the activities for the following year, because everything has a cost to it. So leading up to this point, several months worth of work. I want to say thank you to the mayor and the board, a lot of meetings. Thank you to the staff, lots of hours, and thank you to the citizens for the feedback that we've received so far. And we're not done yet, but I wanted to walk you through just some highlights, if you will. Keep it pretty high level. As you can imagine, there are spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of backup material to this. And if you've never seen any of the budget presentations or any of our discussions, this will be a good snapshot, if you will. Afterwards, if you have questions, feel free to hit me up or our finance director, Julie Neiswanger, who I'll work very closely with to prepare this, or shoot us an email. So let me just dive into it. What I'm going to go through are elements of the manager's recommended budget that the town board is currently considering. Matt, it's not. Okay. Nope, still not. Okay, there we go. Always start off with our vision statement. This comes from our comprehensive master plan. And just to read it, because it is very important, Cornelius is a vibrant and inclusive small community on Lake Norman dedicated to promoting the highest quality of life for all residents. You may say, well, why is this important relative to a budget discussion? The budget document helps us implement our mission and our organizational mission. You've probably heard the term the Cornelius Way, and I want to thank our HR director and the fellow staff and input from the board in creating this statement, if you will. We try to personify what the Cornelius Way meant, and it's consistently striving to reach above and beyond the high bar. We will uphold the qualities we see and hope to inspire in our citizens to serve Cornelius with loyalty, integrity, innovation, resilience, and courage. And it's a lot of words, but we live it every day. And that's our citizens, our board members, and our staff. And revenues makes up 1/2 of our budget. And if you're not aware, property tax makes up the largest component of our revenues. It's almost 60%. Another 15% comes from sales tax. So if you add those two together, that's not quite, but almost 3/4 of our revenue comes from property tax and sales tax. So two very important components. And we pay a lot of attention to the trends, if you will, for both of those. The budget deliverables for the FY23 recommended budget. We released an initial survey. It's our second year doing it, a budget survey to receive some feedback from the citizens on the priorities. And what you'll see in here, I'll enumerate the top 5 and how we're addressing those top 5. Critical needs, also in addition to some of those top 5 priorities. And then also, you may have heard about the ARP, American Rescue Plan funds. There's a plan and suggestion and proposal, if you will, as to how to spend these funds. Let's start off with public safety, which is citizen priority number 1, identified number 1 in the winter budget survey. Starting off public safety and fire. Fire is one of the major components of public safety, police being the other. A lot of you have heard of our transition plan. We operate in cooperation with the Cornelius Limley Fire and Rescue, which is a 501c3 service agency, which has part-time firefighters. We are transitioning to a full-time fire department, and we're doing incrementally through the years. We had a third-party independent study look at our fire services and evaluate it, and their number 1 recommendation was the personnel model just was not sustainable. And this was even prior to the great resignation that was happening with not being able to bring on staff. Even before that, they recommended to move to a full-time fire department. So again, we're slowly adding firefighters. The proposal is for next fiscal year to add 6 additional full-time firefighters. And just to hit again, I'll hit the highlights. There are so many other things I could talk about. We would have to spend about 4 or 5 hours on that. So CLFR, that stands for Cornelius Limley Fire and Rescue. There still are a very core group of part-time firefighters that work for that agency, and they earn a part-time wage. And so there was an analysis done of the part-time wages to make sure that they were competitive with the market that was conducted now probably about 24 months ago. So last year we made the initial increase primarily for the firefighters. And then this year we're doing the second half of the increase for the part-time firefighters. And this includes raising the part-time rates for drivers, captains, deputy chiefs, and then also the chief to what other fire departments are paying in the market. And then we do have a rolling stock replacement, fire engine apparatus replacement. You can see there's about $800,000, not cheap for a fire engine, but you have to replace them. Chief Barbie could tell us about the useful life, if you will. We can spend a lot of time talking about that, but this is a long way to say we have to continue replacing apparatuses. The other half, if you will, public safety is police. We conducted a market salary study to determine, are we paying competitive wages for our police officers? And that's just not the entry-level police officers, but also our tenured officers. We have a lot of officers that have been with us for almost 2 decades, and it's anywhere in between from day 1 to about 2 decades. We also have on staff telecommunicators. We operate a 911 call center right in our police station. We're one of the few communities that are able to offer that benefit to our citizens. And the telecommunicators, we perform a market study for them as well. What we found is that, not a surprise, we were behind the market. The labor market is just moving extremely fast, especially in the public safety realm. And so we've got a recommendation for increases to the salaries for both of these classes of employees in next year's budget. With that comes an increase to the part-time salaries for part-time police officers. A lot of you may not know, but we actually do have part-time officers on staff, and they are an important piece of our force. And so as we increase the full-time pay, the part-time salaries move commensurate with that. Police vehicles, much like the fire apparatus, as I mentioned earlier, every year we have a rolling stock replacement of police vehicles. There's a lot of wear and tear, and Chief Black and Major Balkan could talk about the wear and tear on police vehicles, and it is imperative that we continue to replace our rolling stock. This replaces about 8 police vehicles. Transportation was number 2 on the citizens' priority list. Jeton Road Extension, a lot of you are probably very familiar with this very important parallel road to West Catawba. Jeton Road Extension / Sefton Park Road, which is where the Cats Park and Ride is. It is a town road. It is in dire need of rehabilitation and improvement. Along with that is, and I see our Park Director, Troy Fitzsimmons, back there, and also Scott Higgins, our former chair of the Park Board. They're very familiar with the Emerald Necklace, and I know a lot of you have heard of that. This is our Greenway, a multi-use path network, 13-mile network that goes all the way around town. So Jeton Road Extension actually serves a very integral piece to that Emerald Necklace. So in addition to rehabilitating the road, we'll also install multi-use paths, bike lanes, and there will be a sidewalk on one side as well. Town Center crosswalk safety improvement. So Town Center, right where Town Hall is, where the Kane Center is being constructed. If you've been around Cornelius for even just a couple of years, you've noticed an uptick in activity in downtown. Well, with that, which we love, we want a lot of pedestrians to come downtown, enjoy downtown, and patronize the businesses. But we also want them to be safe as well. So we have on the books some improvements for the crosswalks. There's about 4 crosswalks that we plan on improving right in about a 3-block stretch. And let's see. Also to mention, you've heard me talk before about our bonds. We have a lot of bonds that we're selling. A lot of them are for transportation purposes. In our current fiscal year that we're in, back in the wintertime, we sold about $8 million worth of bonds. $4 million of that was for transportation. And this is just a number just to let you know that in next year, after selling those bonds, the debt service on the $4 million of transportation bonds is about $300,000 per year. And I'll skip that because you guys have seen that map before. Priority number 3, Parks and Recreation. No surprise that that was number 3. A lot of maintenance items, which, you know, I'll be the first to admit is not the most exciting thing, but we need to maintain the assets that we have. And one of them is phase 2 of replacing the lights at Bailey Road Park, the multipurpose fields or the soccer fields. This is where, if you've ever been to our symphony event, which is coming up, the lights are very important there as well. And also the football field at Bailey Middle School. We have a joint agreement to utilize that asset in conjunction with CMS. The lights out there are extremely important. As Troy will tell you, approximately 40% of our programming, think about games, activities, occur at night. So if our lights go down, we lose 40% of the ability to utilize our fields. We have an older system out there that's been failing for years, and we just need to replace it. Last year, we replaced the lights at the 2 ball fields, the 2 baseball fields, last year at Bailey Road Park. So we're finishing it out next year. Legion Park ball field and stormwater repair. Those of you who have anyone who plays baseball and used to utilize Legion Park realize that, you know, we've had the baseball field down and out of commission for now almost 2 years. There's a stormwater pipe that goes underneath the field that has failed. So we have a plan to not only repair the stormwater pipe, but also increase the size. It was undersized. And then also to put in a nice pond feature at the base of the park as well. As we have grown as a town, also have our fields and also the amount of acres that we maintain and the amount of bathrooms that we clean and facilities that we maintain, you name it, everything from traditional fields to splash parks. So there's a need to add park maintenance staff. We have a very small staff, so we're adding one next year. We'll begin that in January. That's why you see the half year. And also recreation program assistance. We are very busy in the park department with young individuals and then also adults who utilize a lot of the programs through the park department. Through the pandemic, there was a little bit of a dip, if you will, in activity for obvious reasons. We are coming out strong out of the pandemic. There's a lot of individuals and families who utilize our park department for programming, and the employees that manage those programs are recreation program assistants, and they're the ones who really are the workhorses for us. So we're back to pre-pandemic times, so there's a need to add the recreation program assistant. Public Works, which is number 4. And Public Works is one of those catch-all departments, but is extremely important. A lot of it's behind the scenes. And one of those is street resurfacing. In the town of Cornelius, we maintain it's about 105 miles worth of town streets. And so every 2 years, we'll do a repaving project. And next year is the time to do our next repaving or resurfacing, if we will. We anticipate we'll be able to resurface about 4 miles next year. Stream restoration, another very important water quality responsibility that we have. If Tyler were here, who's our public works director and assistant town manager, he could quote off the top of his head how many miles we have of streams that we maintain. And off the top of my head, I can't recall it, but we do on a rotating basis go through and do stream restoration projects. And this is a responsibility we have. The next one we have coming up is on the west side of town in the Magnolia Estates, Westmoreland area. Economic development was number 5 on the citizens' priorities. And one of our largest ever, historically largest economic development projects that we've ever worked on is partnering on the Kane Center project. And the construction is going on right now in the downtown area. Just drive down Catawba and you'll see the building going up next to the police station. And I mentioned this earlier, part of the $8 million worth of bonds that we sold back in the winter time was $4 million worth of redevelopment bonds to go towards the capital, the construction, if you will, of the Kane Center. And our piece was just a piece of the entire pie to construct the Kane Center. That does carry a debt service for us of approximately $400,000 per year. In addition to that, we do provide annual operating support to the Kane Center. They've applied for a grant, and the proposal in my recommended budget to the board is a grant for their operations next year. I talked about critical needs, and I think you'll agree when I go through these, a lot of these are extremely important. In the proposed budget, we have the Smithville Revitalization Plan funds for that. / infrastructure. And again, this is a placeholder. The town will continue to discuss this. As Commissioner Sansbury mentioned, there's an ARP survey out in addition to the budget survey. We're still receiving feedback, and we still want feedback from the public as to how to allocate our ARP dollars. So just because it says 3 million here, the number could change in the future. Housing Committee recommendations, as Wayne Herron will tell us, there's a mayoral housing committee that's working diligently behind the scenes. The employee residency incentive is one of the recommendations that came out from that. And in addition to that, forming a community development corporation, which is a fancy way to say this is an actual group, a 501c3 group that will work on affordable housing initiatives in our community. And the recommendation from the Housing Committee was to provide some startup funding costs for this corporation. And this corporation will focus on affordable housing needs all throughout the town. In addition to this, the comprehensive redevelopment plan, the Housing Committee is working in conjunction with a consultant who works in this area. And the plan is halfway put together. Next year, we will have the completion of the plan, and this will be the town's first ever redevelopment plan. And I know that may not sound like that's very exciting, but having a plan in place allows us access to grant funds and other pots of money in the community. A lot of you who've probably heard City of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, there's a large pot of money that is sitting there purposely for affordable housing. And so having a plan in place that has been vetted by the public and adopted by the town board allows us access to pots of money like that so that we can do more things in the community. In addition to that, annual support grants, Traditionally, each year we do provide funding to the Ada Jenkins Center. The Senior Community Connections is a new organization to Cornelius that we're proposing to fund for next year, and also the Arts and Science Council. In the communications realm, thank you to Maylin Joyner, our communications manager, who pushes out a lot of information for us. As she has told us, we need to overhaul our website. Our website needs to be brought up. It's probably in the 18th century, as she probably would define it. So it's moving it ahead a couple centuries to where it needs to be to allow us to be able to communicate better with our citizens. In IT and cybersecurity, Matt Taylor, Chris Lee back there, who are IT professionals, we have been working diligently, I would say, over the past 24 to 36 months on improving our cybersecurity. It is a risk for all organizations, especially municipalities. One of the things we're doing is multi-factor authentication. Think about when you log into your bank, a lot of times it'll text you a code, and we'll be doing that too to better buttress our system. Retention and recruitment is one of those things, last but not least, in some of these slides, that is extremely important. I mentioned the labor market. We are in, I would define, one of the most difficult labor markets that I know I've ever seen in my career, and probably in almost any career. It is difficult to fill and retain all positions. And when I say all positions, that's every single position in every single department, whether it's part-time or full-time. It is extremely difficult to fill those positions and retain them. We do have some increases that are recommended in the personnel budget. Just one note, 75% of the increases in personnel are related to public safety. And again, this is police, fire, telecommunications. There is a merit that I'm recommending of 3.5%. And this is an average merit based upon performance for employees' performance. The market's average is 3.85. There is a 2.5% cost of living adjustment that I'm recommending, and that's commensurate with the inflation. Inflation is at 8%, as we all are painfully aware of. And my recommendation is 2.5. The market range, those that we compete against for other employees, the cost of living is at 3.23. When you combine those, it's a recommended 6% increase for the employees. And I apologize, that's cut off at the bottom there, but what it says is that the market's combined rate is 6.25. So we're right in the range with the market. ARP funds, as I've mentioned before, the town is receiving a total of 9.6 million. We will have to determine how to allocate that. 4.8 million we've received to date. The other half is coming in the next, I'd say, 90 days. The 4.8 million that we'll receive now, discussions with the town board is that we'll use this to supplant public safety salaries. And the reason we're doing that is that frees up 4.8 million worth of general funds. That doesn't have all the federal restrictions and strings attached to it, so that we can spend them on general government purposes and time-sensitive projects, such as the ones I've mentioned: Smithfield revitalization, Legion Park ball field, Chitana extension design, and then also the stream restoration design. There is a recommendation. I've recommended a property tax increase of 1 penny. And the primary reason for that is it ties up with ties and matches up with the bonds that we've sold here back in January. The $8 million worth of bonds, 4 million of transportation, and 4 million of redevelopment bonds. As I've mentioned before, it's about $713,000 of total debt service. And that's a debt service payment that we don't have a funding source for. The 1 cent, additional 1 cent, will generate approximately 750,000 of revenues. So the 1 penny will generate enough revenue to cover our debt service payments for the $8 million worth of bonds that we've sold. And just to put in perspective, this was an excellent question from our commissioners earlier. You know, hey, Andrew, if you have a home that's tax value of $450,000, what does this 1 penny impact mean to that household? That would mean an increase of $45 per year in property tax for that particular household. And I'm going to skip through a lot of this. And just to give you a summary, the property tax rate would be 23.2 cents. We're currently at 22.2. The expenditures are at 33 million. Revenues are at 32.3. And I'll skip through a lot of that. And I'm gonna skip through this just in the interest of time. Debt service, all I'm going to say here is that we've sold approximately $24 million worth of bonds, which is a lot for a medium-sized town such as ours. We have at least $29 million worth of transportation projects coming to us, and a lot of that will be funded with bonds. And so as that happens, and as we start to sell bonds, our debt service payments will start to increase. Operations, other drivers for cost increases, recruitment and retention of personnel. I'll be the first to say over the past 10 years, we got very behind on personnel, keeping their salary and benefits competitive with the market. And we are making gains, but we need to continue to make those gains so that we can retain our quality employees. But it comes at a cost, obviously. The other major driver for cost, and rightfully so, is adding the full-time firefighters to our staff. There's no question that we need to do that, but it does come at a cost. And I will skip through all of that and that. And let me back up one item. And I don't want to miss too much about this, but I also don't want to bore you to death with this particular slide. It's critically important. This is a graphical representation of our fund balance. The green line that you see starting up very high, but then eventually dipping down, when it dips down below the red line, that's fiscal year 27, which sounds like it's a few years off, but it's really not that far away. Commissioner Furch, he lovingly calls this the cliff when it happens in 27. And I mean that sarcastically, but that's something we all have to keep our eye on. As the debt service payments start to increase and we start to sell bonds, and as we add firefighters to the full-time fire department, and also that we have all these other operational costs, it makes it very difficult for us to sustain our financial health at our current tax rate, or even at the 23.2 cent 1 penny increase. We have to be very conscious of not falling below that red line. The red line represents our fund balance, a 40% minimum fund balance policy that we have. And it's a measure of financial health, and we don't want to drop below that red line. And so we're consciously looking at this and exhaustively each year. And it's a long way to say that, we will likely need to make increases in our revenues as we move forward, or drastic cuts in our operations and services. And this is what I just mentioned. And then next steps, and I'll wrap it up here. We do have a public hearing tonight. It began at the last meeting. The board continued it to this night. And then the board has the option to adopt the budget tonight, or they could go one more meeting, June 20th. The budget has to be adopted before June 30th. So we have two more opportunities tonight or on the 20th. Staff has the necessary documentation queued up for the board to vote on the budget if they choose to vote on it tonight. And with that, Commissioner Sansbury, that concludes the presentation, and happy to entertain any questions, or if you want to jump ahead to the next topic, either way.
No. First of all, Andrew, thank you so much. It was very comprehensive. Guys, I know this is an important topic for all of us, right? So any questions or comments on the information that Andrew presented? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the Legion Park, 550 water, as the town approached the stormwater runoff people in Charlotte, SEMA, about them taking hold of that and doing that project.
We actually have, and you probably heard my comments earlier about stream restoration, how we're responsible for, again, I wish I had the number off the top of my head, but it's many miles in town worth of streams. This is actually one of those areas that we're responsible for. The county, it's actually Mecklenburg County, is responsible for the larger streams, and these are large creeks, large streams, and we're responsible for what's called the minor stormwater system, and that's part of the minor stormwater system. So that is all of our responsibility.
You mentioned about raising the tax rate 1%. There's also a reevaluation coming on.
Mhm.
And I believe our homes are going to go up considerably above grade. Has anyone given any thought to the pending reevaluation of properties and how that may affect the budget?
This is an excellent question. So this time next year, we'll be, and I think it's fair to say we'll be grappling with that. As I look at my commissioners, we'll be grappling with what that tax rate should be. Roughly around, I look at Julie, about February, March, the county, the assessor's office will provide us with the information about how much everyone's property values increase, to your point. And we are expecting that they will increase. One of the things that we'll look at, staff and board, is what the revenue neutral tax rate is. We will calculate, Julie and I will calculate based upon the increase in value, if we were to keep our revenues the same, what the tax rate should be, which would be an actual drop from 22.2 or even 23.2 down to some other level. But the board and the staff, we will definitely consider that next year.
The Smithville project, I mean, I'd like to just go on the record that my wife and I are opposed to that. My understanding is those privately owned properties. I don't understand why government would want to give the entire population money to do that. I think that should be up to the property owners. And also, I would think that it would be prudent with all the bonds that's been sold to consider taking part of this rescue money and paying off more expensive ones to free up the payments to be able to subsidize budget.
And I appreciate your comments and obviously any of the board members are happy, can happily step in. One of the things I'll say, one of the things that we are considering in the budget that I've recommended to the board for the 3 million is to utilize that for infrastructure. And I understand your comment about private versus public. What we would spend our funds on would be the public portion, infrastructure pieces such as road improvements, such as stormwater, which are 100% public responsibilities. And as far as utilizing ARP funds, to spend, say, for example, on transportation projects, as I mentioned, that we have a lot of transportation projects coming. For sure, that will be part of the discussion that we have. How much do we want to allocate towards transportation projects as well?
Yeah, when I look at Smithville, what I'm looking at as commissioner is an investment in our town, an investment in Cornelius, making Cornelius a better town. And, as Andrew mentioned, our funds are primarily driven into the infrastructure of that part of town, which previously did not receive the same investment that most other parts of the town have received. So if we could go back and take away the investment in all the other parts of the town, then we'd be at an even starting point. But to allocate the same type of investment, Smithville requires investment.
Yeah, Commissioner Osborne, I mean, that's well said, sir. It's a great comment, and that's one of the decisions we're trying to make, right? How do we take the money that we've received via ARPA and our current budget and invest in the town? And Andrew did a really nice job of saying the town only has certain spheres of responsibility, right? Stormwater, roads, infrastructure. And to Commissioner Osborne's point, depending on the investment that's decided, that's what the town will invest in. So that's kind of where we're headed. But we appreciate, I mean, we obviously solicit input. There's a survey out there. So as much input as we can get from the citizens is very important in helping us make our decision. Commissioner Bilodeau, would you like to add any comments?
Money was found specifically for infrastructure. And it's certainly needed. This, if you look at Smithville, the entryway to our downtown, it requires a facelift. It requires some infrastructure work. So I agree. Oh, and by the way, I'm opposed to the 1 cent tax increase. So you'll hear more about that tonight. There's a lot behind it. If you want to stay after, I'd love to give you my insight.
Any other comments on what Mr. Grant presented? So, yes, sir, Scott.
I know we've lost some folks in personnel in town hall and we have needs for hiring and retention. Where are we? What's our status there?
So one of the largest needs, and I'll come over here just to get over here for the Facebook Live. One of our largest needs is in public safety, as you've heard. And I'll look to Chief to give me a head nod on this. As of Friday, we had a vacancy of 10 sworn police officers, and that's out of 63. So you do the math on that, that's roughly 15% down for police officers. We at one point were 50% down on our full-time firefighters. As I look at Chief Barbie, we have hired back for those positions. But as you see, if the budget is approved, we'll be hiring more as well. Planning department, just as recently as last week, and actually officially, we're at 50% down in our planning department, but we are in a position where we're making offers on at least 2 of those positions. So we'll get back up almost to full staff.
There you go.
This would be according to our police. Is there any public documentation out there for us to know how many murders, robberies, domestic violence, not marijuana charges or traffic violations, but the major gun violations? Is there something out there for us as public people to realize why there's such a need for more police? Is there things behind the scenes that we as a public are just not aware of in our town? I know it seems like there's a lot of problems about public safety, and yet I personally don't know of any other than the mundane day-to-day. So my question is there something, documentation that we could be given to be much more aware of what they have to go through?
So before I hand the mic over to Chief Kevin Black to talk about some of the details, one of the things I do want to mention is Dr. Higgins was asking the question about our vacancies. As I mentioned, we're 15% down on our staff, which is a lot when it comes to any organization, in particular in public safety. So while individually you may not see the horrible crimes affecting you personally, when we're down that much, we have to shift resources. And when we shift resources, we're not able to do things that we would normally do, such as community policing, such as traffic enforcement. And the number one complaint we have from our citizens is traffic enforcement. So I'm going to stop there and hand the mic over to the chief.
It's a great question. Certainly there is data that comes out nationally and through the state, but as you say, national data, we're looking at averages across the whole United States. So it's not just specific to a single community and that community's needs or population. For us, we look locally. Fortunately for us, in the northern end of the county, we don't have the violent crime like you see on the news that's going on in Charlotte. Not that it could never come here, but we just typically do not have the violent crime, the gun crime that you see. We have some, and at any point we can create any report for any citizen based on the data here locally in Cornelius, as far as that goes. But as the manager says, in these times of less resources, we do shift because the street out here, patrol is our number one function. So we shift resources from specialized assignments. Right now, we have a 5-man traffic unit team approved, but due to our shortage in labor, we only have 2 officers assigned to that unit. So typically, there's only 1 here during a day because we're trying to spread them out as much as possible. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, I believe so, because you did say we could ask for what?
Absolutely. Any of our data statistics here locally, you can make a request. We'll be more than glad to produce that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Andrew. I think, Mr. Duke, you have a question as well, sir?
Yeah, I read in Cornelius today that the Torrance Chapel project is being considered for elimination. What's the cost savings to the town of not doing that project?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't want to steal Mr. Heron's thunder, so I'll let him answer that when he gets up here. And guys, in the interest of time, I know we only have about 15 minutes left and we have 2 more presentations, but any other questions regarding Mr. Grant's information? Andrew, I know we did have one request to get an update on the COVID situation. I don't think we're prepared to do that this morning, so maybe at the next meeting.
We can certainly do that. We can reach out to the health director, Dr. Washington, and if he's not able to attend, we can definitely provide that update.
I'd like to bring up Commissioners Bilodeau and Osborne, and they're going to give an update on the Growth Management Committee.
Sir, good job. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for residents of Cornelius for being here and for watching online. Appreciate that. Yep. All right. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the people that make up the Growth Management Task Force. I want to tell you just a small piece about what I've experienced with them since being on the task force, and I will jump into what exactly the task force is. But Kelly Gardner, who's on the team, one of the things that she's brought to the task force right away is she's able to look at the town and look at opportunities to string together pieces that are operating on their own and put them together in more of an entire plan. I'll give you an example. She identified a fantastic way to utilize some greenway that's already been designed or developed in the future, and to have it continued on to a potential resident access, public access, waterfront area. And I think that continuity and tying our resources together like that are fantastic. So really appreciate that from her. Fred Westway, boy, I tell you, he knows more about Cornelius than just about anybody that I've met, certainly any resident of Cornelius. He can tell you every street, every alley, every gully that I've seen so far. Very knowledgeable. Ava Callender, she has a great deal of vision, and she adds that to our team. She was able to look into 2042 and very eloquently give us an example of what the best Cornelius could look like in the year 2042. Fantastic job. John Show, many of you guys, maybe you see his articles, in the Cornelius Today. Funny guy, but I can tell you, he's not always so funny in our meetings. He will not hold back. He will tell you like it is, which is great, because that's what we need. We need, these citizens have come together to represent the town, and he does a fantastic job of doing that. Susan Johnson and Hardy McConnell both come from the planning board and bring a wealth of experience and knowledge representing the town and things that we need to make sure that we're considering as we go through the creation of a new land use plan. Dennis Bilodeau, of course, and myself get to participate as well. But we're really very interested in what the residents are saying as they're reaching out to their fellow residents in their communities. It's a very diverse group, represents diverse areas of Cornelius. They do a fantastic job reaching out into the community, bringing those ideas into the community. So what is and look, let me just say, Wayne, I don't know where he went, way in the back. We've got Wayne and Becky in our team. And I know we all have, Google Assistant or, all kinds of answers available to us on the internet. These guys are faster than the internet. They're better and more accurate than the internet. Sometimes when I ask Alexa something, I don't always get the answer that I want. I have to say it a different way. These guys completely get it, and they're right there with the answer right off the bat. It's fantastic having them as a resource. So what the task force is, it's a Cornelius citizen-driven land use plan development group. So what we've done is we've reached into the community and we've said, hey guys, this is your town.
what do you want Cornelius to look like? And the land use plan will serve as a policy and guidance to residents, developers, town staff, and elected officials for the next 5 to 7 years. So the first thing that we did is we said, well, what are we driving towards? What is Cornelius, right? Like, what do we want it to look like in 20 years down the road? Some of you may have had the opportunity to participate on this online because we did put some requests out asking for additional input from the residents, and we're always welcoming this input from the residents. But the first thing we wanted to make sure of is what are we driving towards, right? We wanted to know where we were going before we created this plan for the next 5 to 7 years. So what I've listed here are some of the common themes that we came out of these discussions with. So small town feel, medium growth, walkability, family focused, events that accentuate our assets, parks, museums, roads, controlled runoff, landscaping beautification, waterfront access, and a downtown center that has parking, breweries, arts district, work life, landscaping, and more east side residential services. So one of the things that we also had to get our arms around as we started this process was, what are the trade-offs, right? Like, how do we do this? What do we want it to look like? So do we want to stop all growth in Cornelius? Do we want medium, moderate growth? Or do we want to go after a very aggressive growth strategy? And what are the trade-offs of doing each of these things? Where we ended up was a moderate growth strategy. And in doing so, we did have to make trade-offs, and every strategy does have a trade-off. But we did decide most commonly that we thought that moderate growth strategy was most appropriate for Cornelius. So what we do and how we're going about this is a very hands-on approach. Like I said, really, we identified a project charter. We created a vision for the town, and then identified what the future constraints are and the trade-offs. And then we set forth to really get our hands dirty. We create maps. We put them up on the walls. We break into 2 groups, split the effort, go into the groups, split Cornelius into 4 quadrants so that we can take on bite-sized activities. It would be impossible to do all of this at one time. And what we're doing is taking them on quadrants. And then in our individual groups, we are literally creating a land use map. And we'll have multiple iterations of this, but we have our first iteration when both groups do a report out to each other to share what they were thinking and how did they came up with their maps. And that gives us an opportunity to go back and make a change right then. So we anticipate doing this all the way through, just in terms of land use designation. And then we're going to come back through on the back end, look at everything as a whole, do another iteration to make sure we haven't missed anything or that we haven't overcompensated for a type of land use. And then we're going to put in the characteristics that are specific to those land uses, like densities and building heights and things of that nature to fit what we're creating. After we've done that for each of those quadrants, we will have our recommendation for the town. So some of the exciting ideas and next steps that have come up, one of the things that's really been highlighted is we're accentuating our assets. So some of the new ideas that I haven't heard of before, which is really exciting to me, is the idea of creating a new South Cornelius gateway. We have one going into East Cornelius, but what about when we're coming over from 73, right? Right when we're coming onto Catawba Avenue for the first time. More public access to Lake Norman, stronger buffers to protect residential and nature areas, and more walkability. These are some of the common themes that we've seen throughout our discussions. So what do we have next? We need to finish our southwest quadrant, which is just about done, which would put us halfway done in the land use designation. Then we're going to attack the southeast quadrant, northeast quadrant. And like I said, go back, identify what the characteristics are to each of those land use designations. And then we'll present the recommendation for the land use plan to the town. And that is it. Happy to field any questions or give Dennis a chance here. I'm sorry, I didn't leave you with much time on this. But
No, and that's fine. So in the interest of time, let me just say ditto. Michael did a great job of covering where we are. I can tell you that we're going to do more to push out the information to the town, to the citizens. Our expectation is that we'll present information on what this group has put together on a broad basis. And I know May Lynn has lots of thoughts and plans to get that done. So we're fortunate to have Commissioner Osborne at the helm. As you can see, he's very organized, does great presentation, and we're going to get that information out to you. So stay tuned. Yes.
Dennis, I'm glad to hear that last point because I've been trying to inquire as to where we are with several members of the committee. And again, they say you're in your planning, preparation and whatnot. So I'm glad to see that that's done to the point where we can communicate some of that stuff happening. Second point is, that one of your members may well know a lot about Cornelius, but I know a lot about Cornelius too, because I ride the whole area in bicycle. I'm not just saying that to say that I know more than they do in terms of what needs to be done now. What I'm saying is there are a lot of other people in our community, and I think we talked about this when we first talked about the committee, adding people to that committee that would help improve that scope of the kind of things that are needed in the town. The other point is talking about the entrance to South End, that we've talked about business parks coming in over 73 year, the atrium coming in off of 21, what's going to happen 21 stuff. So I'm sure there's already a lot of information already put together before by the town. I hope they're drawing upon that information, talking to those people who are going to be involved in, who have already purchased or already have plans for property and all.
Yeah, great point, Scott. And let me assure you that not a meeting goes by where we don't ask our participants on the task force to make sure they're getting out. They represent areas across the town and business. We wanted to make sure that the business community was plugged in as well. So that's not the only source, though. Of course, we are asking residents through Facebook and other means. Maylin does a great job of putting it in front of folks. We do need input from more than just this committee. And absolutely, we would be a fail if all we had is 10 people's opinion of what should happen. So more to come. I guess
Any
Wayne,
additional questions?
you're up, Wayne. We've left you 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, the savings on Torrance Chapel, if we were to delete that project, our contract with DOT says that we're responsible for everything over the original 16. Right now, that project's at around 27 million, so it's 11 million savings on our end. So I'm going to just go real fast because folks have seen this before. I'm going to hit on the high points. Tyler is responsible for the local projects. Bailey 115 is complete. I hear a lot of positive. Tyler did a great job on this project. A lot of capacity. That intersection is 10 times better. Jim Street, they have begun construction on that, bringing in some pipe, working with Charlotte Water. This will be part of our connection from 115 over to 21. On our DOT projects, Catawba 21 on schedule to start in 2023. They've already started utility coordination, dual roundabouts on one at Hampton, one up north of the credit union, North Cross Drive extension. This is one that people won't see the whole time it's being done because it's on new location, but it'll be a great north-south connector, enabling us to get down to Burkdale. What you see here on the screen is where the roundabout on Westmoreland is supposed to go, and the connection there at Westmoreland Athletic Complex. Torrance Chapel, this is the one that you've seen in the paper. Yes, we are discussing on a majority of our projects, DOT has informed us that costs have gone up. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Costs have gone up on everything in this world. But what we've had to discuss is, can we afford those cost increases? Because most of our agreements with DOT have a cutoff. DOT will pay up to a certain amount and then the rest is on the town. This is one where the cost was around 16 million. We're now up to NCDOT estimate of around 27 million. So can we afford 11 million? Is this project worth it? And one of the things we've talked about is we're not going to get the full benefit at day one. So do our citizens really want to spending 11 million for something we don't get the benefit for on day one? The reason I say that is DOT says you only get the benefit if you eliminate the left turns at Torrance and Catawba. Well, based on our citizen input, we did not choose to eliminate the left turns. We're going to keep those. And our agreement with DOT is we keep them until there's a 15% growth in traffic. So our thing is, if we're not going to get the benefit on day one, why spend $11 million? And so our town board will continue that discussion tonight, final decision tonight, or at some point in the near future. Potts Roundabout, this one's moving forward, starting in 23. Bailey Road Extension, this one is also moving forward. This will take Bailey Road from the sharp curve. It'll punch it right out to 21. I-77 shoulder hardening. Don't talk a whole lot about this one, but a lot of citizens are in favor of this. Being able to get off at 25 and come straight to 28 on the shoulder without getting in the lanes. I've seen this in other states. It works very well. So a lot of citizens are interested in this. Hickory Street, simple signal project, but nothing is simple in DOT world. This has now been pushed out to 2024, and the cost on this one has increased as well, but it's within what we have budgeted in our bond dollars. West Catawba Phase 2, they are acquiring right of way. They are still working, and they're working north to south. But we've met with two groups that asked, well, hey, we're redesigning projects. Can you start in the south? And DOT has said, no, we are working on this and working now. The only reason we will change is if you want us to stop the project or slow it down. And our response is no, keep it going. So right now, the big construction is scheduled to start in 24. You know, folks, this is 22. That's not that far away. It'll be here before we know it. And what they've also told us, if they get the right of way acquired, they can start sooner. So we're hopeful on this one. This project is at 51 million, but our only contribution here is for betterments, larger sidewalks, streetlights, utilities. So right now, DOT is on the hold for all 51 million of that. We did put in 1.2 million to speed it up. That's helped us a lot. 21 widening, way in the future. This is now, we're talking 2031. I'll be dead and gone by then. NC 73. Y'all live much healthier than I do. NC 73, there's 3 segments of this starting in 2027. We put that in there, even though Cornelius doesn't have a big stake in this. We all use 73 at some point in our daily lives. So we want you to know that one. And that's it. Almost 3 minutes. Yes, sir. Yes. Well, right now, we don't have a budget for those because for most of them, we chose not to do it. For instance, we got an initial estimate on undergrounding utilities. That was going to be $7 million, and that was 4 years ago. So I can only imagine today that's closer to 10 or 11 million. So we did not know. And we've said no to most of the embedderments. Right. Agreed. Well, what we have agreed to is expanded size in the sidewalks. We're talking 13-foot sidewalks on each side. Bike lanes. Yes, sir. They are separate. Yes. What I call the spandex lanes are different from the, and I'm not one of the spandex riders. So, but yes, right now they are separate. Now we will be meeting with DOT to get into more detail. They're doing what they call value engineering. They're trying to bring that cost down. So they'll talk to us about what they can value engineer. One of the things that recently came up was, as you know, certain segments of this were super street, or RCI as DOT calls it. Well, they took Nance Road back to a standard intersection. Most citizens are going to like that. They're okay with that. But we've actually had some people say, well, I prefer the super street. It moves traffic and accommodates more traffic. So we'll continue to discuss value engineering, and if any changes occur, we'll let you know between now and 2024.
great.
Mhm.
Great job from making, but there are safety issues.
Yes.
That are not reported.
Yes.
to the Police or other things.
Mhm.
There's so many new people using this thing now because the roads aren't safe.
That's right.
And so that's why we need to vote. It's
That's
not
right.
what- it's one of those things. We got dogs on leashes,
Mhm.
bicycles, walkers. We've got more of those than ever before now.
Yes,
It's all on that one tag.
I totally agree with you. Yes, sir.
If the, work probably across November 77,
Yes,
time whenever it's approved, it's supposed to, make things better.
yes, and it does.
And
Mhm.
moderate road, of course, it's already bad.
Yes.
Many times one day.
Mhm.
Rush hour. So my question is there any possibility at the time we did it, it was close down half of it, do half of it, do the other half? Has there been any look at the possibility of widening the existing bridge and taking care of that? Because that to me is taking care of a whole lot of equals. I'm assuming that you want us to drive across that bridge to see this
Mhm.
revitalization of Smithville. Right?
Yes.
So my point is what other options do we have? And to me, it would seem a possibly practical solution. You can leave what's there in place and you can, instead of tearing it down, you could consider why.
It's a good question. And yes, it has been studied. Right now, it's not economically feasible to do that. What DOT has suggested is that we look at the bookends. And what we mean by bookends is improvements to 21 Catawba and improvements to Torrance Chapel Catawba. That's why this decision on Torrance Chapel is so important. If we don't act now, DOT will come back with another project at some point in the future, and it may or may not be as good or have the same impacts as what we have now. We don't know. And there's other options that they can look at down the road. DOT's main goal, and they have a priority, one is to protect 77, protect that traffic on 77, then protect the ramps, so the ramps do not back up onto the interstate. Then it's moving on the DDI, and then it's how does Cornelius function at our two bookends, Catawba 21 and Torrance Chapel. So once they go down that checklist, that's what they're looking at, is what are the cost-effective improvements that we can make on either end to move that traffic. Now, yes, the DDI has made it safer that we don't have the T-bones, we don't have the left turn collisions, but we still need those bookends to move that congestion, move that traffic. So we're very critical on getting the 21 Catawba improvements and some point doing something at Torrance Chapel. It may not be that project we got right now, but at some point we got to do something that will improve the congestion in that entire area. Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's fine. That's fine. Yes. Well, what a lot, and yeah, that's an excellent question. Right now, there's a lot of folks, including me, that love to use Westmoreland. That's a great flyover, and it's less congested because there's not ramps. But for economic, yes, certain times of the day. I do a lot of my travel in off hours, but I'm flexible enough to do that. I know. So for economic development reasons, we are planning ramps at Westmoreland, which would be our exit 25, or no, excuse me, exit 27. But with that, we are proposing additional flyover, and one would be just south of the new Atrium Hospital around where Grace Covenant Church is. So that would be a flyover that would tap into that North Cross Drive extension. I think it's critical. It's good for economic development to have the ramps, have the exits. I think it's equally important to have the flyover. So many people want to cross 77 without dealing with ramp traffic. So I think it's critical that we get that flyover south of Westmoreland, and I think it'll be great. I'm looking forward to that. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Main Street. We worry about our little businesses and they're filled on the main street and their clients come park any place or whatever, but it is not a pretty town. But this great revitalization, we look like we're a mess down there, and I've been here 12 years, and it's been a mess. Is there some plan?
Yes. There's three parts to it. One is finish the construction that's going on. Construction's always a mess. But once construction is finished, things will be better. Part two, we have an engineer looking at parking and traffic circulation in the town center. And we want to propose different options to the town board of what we can do to improve parking, traffic circulation, and how things move. The third thing is we have a plan for 115. And we have to get in line with DOT. The cost is more than we could bear on our own as a small town. So we have to get in line with DOT. We have to start getting it scored. We have to start doing our normal bagging. And once that happens, hopefully we'll have improvements to Catawba, 115, and all of downtown. So I'll stop there.
Wayne, I don't mean to cut you off. You're always you're a very popular act, but I just want to, in respect out of time. So, first of all, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you very much to the residents who joined us today, live and virtual, and a special thank to H2 for their generous support of this coffee chat. I think we probably want to wrap it up. I know we're going to stick around and answer any additional questions, but for the sake of time, I think we probably need to finish up. So, Maylin, the next coffee chat is scheduled for August 1st. Okay. So we encourage everyone to come out as well. And again, 2 reminders that the survey is posted on our website. I highly encourage folks to visit the website, albeit antiquated. We're going to update that soon. And there's also a town board meeting tonight. We encourage everyone to attend. So thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.